I never expected that one night at a speed dating event would change everything. I went in with low hopes, just looking for a distraction from my lonely routine. But then I saw him. His smile wasn't perfect, but it felt real, and when our eyes met, the room disappeared. We spoke only for a few minutes, yet it felt like we had known each other forever. I thought that was it, that he would move on to the next table and I would never see him again. But when the event ended, and I walked toward the bathroom to catch my breath, I noticed footsteps behind me. It was him. And the moment he followed me inside, I knew this wasn't going to be just another ordinary night. I went to the gay speed dating event with little expectation. Honestly, I was tired of trying. Tired of failed conversations that never went past a first laugh, tired of numbers that never turned into calls, tired of being just another face in the crowd. I told myself I was only there because a friend had pushed me, saying I needed to get out of my comfort zone. The place was small, dimly lit, buzzing with nervous laughter and soft chatter. There were tiny tables lined up in a circle, each one waiting for its turn to host an awkward 2-minute exchange. I sat down, tapping my fingers on the glass of water they'd given me, and wondered if I could sneak out without being noticed. That's when I saw him. He wasn't the tallest, not the most polished, but there was something about the way he carried himself that made me stare longer than I should have. He looked comfortable in his skin, even with all the chaos of the room. When his eyes found mine across the tables, it was like the air shifted. I quickly looked away, pretending to be interested in the little number card in front of me, but the truth is my heart had started racing. When it was finally his turn to sit in front of me, I didn't expect much. Most of these mini dates were just a blur of small talk. What do you do? Where do you live? What music do you like? But with him, it was different. He sat down, leaned forward slightly, and smiled, not like he was trying to impress me, but like he already knew me somehow. "Hi," he said simply, and the sound of his voice carried a kind of warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. I said hi back, and suddenly 2 minutes felt too short. We didn't waste time on the basics. Instead, we fell into this rhythm, talking about the strangest little things, our favorite childhood snacks, the way both of us hated long goodbyes, and how we thought most speed dating events felt like job interviews. We laughed more than we should have, and every time he looked at me, I had this feeling that he was really seeing me, not just the version of myself I showed strangers. The bell rang too soon, and just like that, he had to move to the next table. I watched him walk away, my chest heavy, trying to act casual while every part of me wanted to stop him. I told myself not to overthink it, that he was just being polite, that maybe he had laughed like that with everyone else. But as the night went on, I couldn't stop glancing in his direction. Sometimes, I caught him glancing back. That tiny connection, that unspoken pull between us, grew with every fleeting moment. By the end of the event, everyone was exchanging polite goodbyes, gathering coats and scribbling down numbers on slips of paper. I stood there for a second, wondering if I should just leave before disappointment had the chance to ruin the little spark I was holding on to. I turned toward the hallway leading to the bathroom, telling myself I just needed a break, some space to breathe. My footsteps echoed softly on the tiled floor, and I could still hear the chatter fading behind me. I pushed open the bathroom door, stepped inside, and let out a deep sigh, leaning against the sink. I tried to calm myself down, to push away the lingering image of his smile, to stop imagining what it might feel like if the night didn't end here. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, closing in behind me. I turned toward the sound, and there he was, standing in the doorway. His eyes were steady on mine, as if he had made a decision the moment I walked away. My pulse quickened, my breath caught, and in that instant, I knew the night wasn't finished. He didn't say anything at first, and I didn't either. The bathroom was quiet except for the faint hum of music spilling in from the main room and the soft dripping of a leaky faucet. My heart pounded in my chest, louder than any sound around us. I couldn't read his face. Was he just following me by accident? Was he going to laugh and make a joke about how awkward this was? Or was he here for the same reason? My chest felt tight, my stomach turned, and my palms started sweating. He closed the door behind him, and suddenly the space felt even smaller, like the air had thickened. He leaned against the wall for a second, his eyes still locked on me. I opened my mouth to say something, but nothing came out. For a moment, it felt like we were caught between fear and curiosity, both of us not wanting to break the fragile electricity building in the silence. Then he smiled, that same easy, unpolished smile he had given me at the table, but now it carried a weight, like it held secrets we hadn't shared yet. "You left kind of fast," he said softly, his voice lower now, more personal, like it belonged only to this moment. I laughed nervously and shrugged, pretending I had just needed space, though the truth was I was running from the possibility that someone like him could make me feel this way in such a short time. "I needed some air," I muttered, though the air here was thick and heavy. He nodded, like he understood more than I was admitting, and he took a small step closer. My instinct was to back away, but my body wouldn't let me. I stayed rooted where I was, my grip on the sink tightening. I wanted to ask him why he followed me, what he thought he was doing, but I didn't. I couldn't. His presence alone had already answered part of it. The room seemed to shrink with every inch he moved. He wasn't rushing, he was deliberate, careful, almost testing how close he could get before I pulled away. And the strangest part was that I didn't want to pull away. I wanted him closer, though I didn't dare admit it out loud. When he finally stopped, only a step away from me, I could see every detail of his face, the faint shadow of stubble on his jaw, the tiny scar near his eyebrow, the way his eyes seemed to glow with something unspoken. "You felt it too, right?" he asked suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. My breath hitched, and I didn't answer right away. Because yes, I had felt it, but saying it out loud meant stepping into something I wasn't sure I was ready for. Still, under the weight of his gaze, I couldn't lie. I nodded slowly, my throat dry, and that was enough for him to let out a small breath, almost like relief. For a moment, neither of us moved. We just stood there, caught in the strange, unplanned intimacy of a bathroom we hadn't expected to share. My mind raced, telling me to be cautious, to step back, to remind myself that I didn't even know his last name. But my heart was louder, screaming at me to stop hiding behind fear, to let myself want something real for once, even if it scared me. He leaned a little closer, his voice so quiet it felt like a secret being passed between us. "I don't usually do things like this," he confessed, and the honesty in his tone made my chest ache. I believed him. And maybe that was why I let myself breathe him in, let myself linger in the closeness instead of breaking away. I didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about the future or the past. I was caught in the now, in him, in us, in a connection that felt too strong to ignore. I don't know how long we stood there, just breathing the same air, too close to pretend this was nothing but not close enough to call it anything at all. My mind kept searching for an explanation, a reason, something logical to hold on to, but nothing made sense. It was like the entire night had been leading to this moment, though we had only spoken for minutes. He kept watching me, his eyes searching mine as though he was waiting for permission, not to move, not to speak, but to exist in my space. I felt my chest rising and falling faster than usual, every inhale shaking like it carried more weight than it should. When I finally found my voice, it cracked, low and uncertain. "Why did you follow me?" I asked, though part of me already knew. He tilted his head slightly, as if the question deserved more than a casual answer, and then he whispered, "Because I didn't want the night to end like that. Not with you." His words hit me harder than I expected. I had been to so many of these events, sat at so many tables, smiled at so many strangers, and left feeling like a ghost every single time. But now here was someone who saw me enough to chase me into this quiet corner, someone who admitted he wanted more when most people only wanted to escape. I swallowed hard, trying to steady the storm inside me, but it was useless. My heart had already betrayed me, beating fast enough that I was sure he could hear it. He moved another step closer, not pushing, not rushing, but closing the gap between us until his shoulder nearly brushed mine. I could smell the faint trace of his cologne, something warm and clean that made me dizzy. My instincts screamed for me to protect myself, to remember all the times I had gotten hurt by believing too quickly, by trusting too easily. Yet there was something different about him, something that softened the edges of my doubt. He wasn't pretending. I could see that in the way his voice trembled just slightly, in the way his hands fidgeted at his sides like he was nervous too. I know this is strange, he continued, breaking the silence that had stretched too long. I felt something when we talked. I haven't felt that in years. His honesty made my chest tighten, and I had to look away for a second, afraid he would see too much in my face. I didn't want him to know how badly I wanted to believe him, how desperately I wanted this to be real. I had built walls for so long, convincing myself that keeping people out was easier than getting hurt again, and yet here I was, standing in a bathroom with a man I had just met, already letting those walls crack. I turned back to him, my voice softer this time. You don't even know me. He smiled faintly, almost sadly, and shook his head. Maybe not yet. But I want to. His words lingered in the air, heavy and hopeful, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like running. I felt like staying, like letting this moment stretch as long as it needed to, like risking whatever came next just to see where it would go. The thought scared me, but it also lit something inside me that had been dark for far too long. And so I didn't step back. I didn't break away. I just stood there, letting myself be seen, letting myself feel, knowing deep down that something had begun between us that neither of us was ready to walk away from. The longer I stood there with him, the more it felt like the world outside didn't exist. The noise of the event, the clinking glasses, the laughter, the hurried conversations, all of it faded into the background as if the bathroom had become its own separate universe where time was moving differently. I could feel my pulse in my neck, heavy and insistent, and the silence between us was so thick it felt like it could break at any second. He was close enough now that if I leaned forward even slightly, our shoulders would touch. It made my whole body tense, not out of fear but anticipation. I wasn't used to someone stepping toward me like this, not without hesitation, not without doubt in their eyes. He wasn't playing a game. He wasn't measuring his words or holding back to appear cool. Everything about him was raw, unpolished, and unguarded, and maybe that was why it scared me more than anything else. I looked down, gripping the edge of the sink so tightly my knuckles turned pale. I don't even know what to say, I admitted, my voice low, almost breaking. He let out a soft chuckle, not mocking but gentle, as if he understood the weight of what I meant. You don't have to say anything, he replied. His voice carried that same steady warmth I'd felt at the table, only now it wrapped itself around me in a way that made it harder to breathe. I lifted my eyes back to him, and when I did, he was watching me with an intensity that made my stomach flip. It wasn't just attraction, it was curiosity, a need to understand me, to peel back layers I had kept hidden for years. It was terrifying to be looked at like that, like I mattered, like I was worth more than just a passing glance. I wanted to tell him to stop, to look away before I unraveled, but I couldn't. I didn't want him to. Do you always follow people into bathrooms? I asked finally, a weak attempt at humor to cover up the rush of emotions flooding through me. His lips curved into a smile, and he shook his head slowly. Only when I feel like I'll regret it if I don't. His honesty caught me off guard again, and I felt my chest tighten as if the walls around my heart were collapsing piece by piece. There was no script for this, no rehearsed lines or practiced moves. Everything was happening too fast and too real, and maybe that was what made it impossible to ignore. He leaned a little closer, not invading my space but gently testing the distance, as though waiting for me to decide whether he should stay or pull back. I didn't move. My body was frozen, not with fear but with the weight of choice, the realization that if I allowed this moment to continue, nothing about my life would feel the same after. I thought about all the nights I had come home alone, convinced that love was something made for other people, not me. I thought about the times I had lowered my expectations so much that I stopped believing in real connections altogether. And now, in the most unexpected place, at the most unexpected time, someone had found me anyway. My voice trembled as I whispered, "This feels crazy." He nodded slightly, his eyes never leaving mine. "Maybe it is. But sometimes crazy is the only thing worth chasing." His words hit something deep inside me, something I had buried under years of disappointment and fear. And as much as my mind told me to be cautious, my heart had already made its choice. I stayed still, allowing the moment to carry me, knowing that whatever happened next, I couldn't undo the fact that something real had already begun between us. I could feel the weight of his words still pressing against me, echoing in my chest long after he had said them. Crazy is the only thing worth chasing. They circled in my head, louder than the sound of my own doubts, and I hated how much I wanted to believe them. My life had been built around routine, around safety, around protecting myself from the sting of rejection I had known too well. Yet here I was, in the most unlikely place, feeling more alive in a few stolen minutes than I had in years. His eyes hadn't left me, and it was unbearable, that intensity, that unwavering focus. No one had ever looked at me like that before, not as if I was a mystery to solve or a temporary distraction, but like I was the only thing worth paying attention to in this entire chaotic world. I shifted slightly, the cold porcelain of the sink digging into my palms as I gripped it harder, grounding myself. My mouth felt dry, and my heart was hammering so hard I thought I might actually faint. Still, I couldn't tear myself away. "You don't even know who I am outside this," I whispered, my voice trembling with both fear and longing. He moved his hand slightly, almost as though he wanted to reach for me but stopped short, keeping that invisible line between us intact. "Then let me find out," he said softly, every word deliberate, like he wanted to carve them into me so I couldn't ignore them later. His voice wasn't demanding, it wasn't filled with the arrogance I had often seen in men who only wanted something temporary. It was patient, like he understood that whatever this was, it would take more than one night to unravel. My chest tightened, and I found myself searching his face for a lie, for some sign that he was just saying what he thought I wanted to hear. But there was nothing, only honesty, raw and unpolished, and it terrified me more than any lie ever could. The silence stretched again, heavy and suffocating, but it wasn't the kind of silence that begged to be filled with words. It was the kind that demanded to be felt, the kind that made my skin prickle and my stomach churn. I had to look away for a second, breaking the pull of his eyes, staring down at the floor as if the cracked tiles could offer me answers. My mind was screaming at me, telling me this wasn't normal, that nothing about this could be trusted, that falling into something so quickly was only a setup for heartbreak. But beneath all of that noise, there was a quieter voice, a stubborn one I had ignored for years, whispering that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something I didn't have to run from. When I finally lifted my gaze back to him, he hadn't moved. He was still watching me with that same steady focus, patient, waiting, like he knew I was fighting a war inside myself and was willing to let me win it in my own time. That patience unraveled me more than any touch could have. My lips parted, words forming slowly, reluctantly. "I'm scared," I admitted, my throat tightening around the confession. For a moment, I thought he would pull away, that the honesty would scare him off. But instead, his expression softened, his eyes warm in a way that made my chest ache. "Me too," he said, almost in a whisper, and somehow that made it easier to breathe. Because I wasn't alone in this. I wasn't the only one standing at the edge of something terrifying and new. We were both here, both unsteady, both unsure. And in that shared fear, there was something grounding, something that made me believe maybe it was okay to stay in this moment just a little longer. The admission hung between us like fragile glass, both of us afraid to touch it but unable to ignore the way it shimmered in the dim light. I was scared, and so was he, yet neither of us stepped back. If anything, it felt like those two words had pulled us closer, like we had been stripped of the need to pretend we were stronger or braver than we really were. My chest rose and fell unevenly, each breath catching as though my body was trying to process what my heart already knew. I wanted this, even if it terrified me. I wanted him, even though I barely knew him. For the first time in years, I wasn't calculating outcomes or rehearsing how to protect myself when things inevitably fell apart. I was just here, standing with him, letting the moment consume me in ways I didn't understand but couldn't resist. He shifted slightly, his shoulder brushing mine in the smallest movement, and even that faint touch sent a shiver down my spine. It was nothing, just an accidental graze, but it felt like an entire promise, one that said he wasn't running either. I dared to look at him again, and his eyes caught mine instantly. There was no hesitation there, only the raw honesty of someone who had chosen to stay in this room with me when he could have walked away. My lips trembled with the weight of words I didn't know how to form, but he spoke first. "Maybe it's okay to be scared," he said, his tone steady but gentle. "Maybe it means this is real." His words seeped into me slowly, breaking down walls I thought were unshakable. I wanted to argue, to remind him that real things fall apart too, that being real doesn't mean being safe, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. Because deep down, I knew he was right. Fear was proof of something worth holding on to, and maybe that was what made this moment matter so much. My throat tightened, and I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice. "I don't want to get hurt again," I admitted, and it felt like tearing open a wound I had kept hidden. He didn't flinch, didn't look away. Instead, he nodded slowly, as though he understood in ways I didn't have to explain. "Neither do I," he murmured, "but I don't want to miss this either." The way he said it, so quiet and certain, made my stomach twist with emotions I wasn't ready for. I could feel the walls inside me shifting, collapsing, making room for something I hadn't let myself feel in so long. I didn't move away from him. I didn't let my fear push me out the door or back into the safety of the crowd. Instead, I stood there, letting the closeness grow heavier, letting his presence fill the cracks I had thought would stay empty forever. The silence that followed wasn't awkward anymore. It was thick, electric, full of words neither of us needed to say out loud. And for the first time in years, I felt the smallest spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as broken as I thought. I could feel the rhythm of my heartbeat slowing, not because I was calm, but because the fear was settling into something different, something quieter, almost tender. Standing there with him, so close that I could hear the faint hitch in his breathing, I realized how long it had been since I had allowed myself to feel this way. Vulnerable, open, unguarded. It wasn't easy. Every instinct inside me wanted to put the mask back on, to laugh it off or create some excuse to slip away before things went further. But I didn't move. My body refused to obey the fear in my head, because my heart had already chosen to stay. He shifted slightly, and this time his hand brushed against mine. It wasn't a bold move, not the kind of touch that demanded anything from me. It was gentle, hesitant, like he was giving me the chance to decide if it was okay. My fingers twitched, and for a moment I thought I'd pull away, but I didn't. Instead, I let the warmth of his skin settle into mine, and the tiniest spark of connection jolted through me. That simple touch broke something open inside me, and I had to close my eyes to steady myself. "It doesn't feel like we just met," I whispered, almost afraid of the truth in my own words. His voice came low, steady, carrying the same fragile honesty I felt. "I was thinking the same thing. The way he said it made my chest ache, because I had spent so long telling myself that kind of connection didn't exist, that people didn't just click like this, that love was always a slow, calculated process. Yet here I was, proving myself wrong with every passing second. My throat tightened as I searched for what to say next, but words felt useless, too small to hold what was building between us. So I stayed quiet, letting the silence speak for both of us. He didn't let go of my hand, and I didn't want him to. The world outside that door could have been falling apart and I wouldn't have noticed. All that mattered was this strange, impossible gravity pulling me toward him, a force I couldn't resist even if I wanted to. I thought about all the times I had been let down before, the promises that had crumbled, the smiles that had turned out to be lies. But then I looked at him, really looked, and I didn't see someone pretending. I saw someone just as scared as me, just as unsteady, just as unwilling to walk away. That scared me even more, because it meant this wasn't a game. This was real. My chest ached with the weight of it, and yet, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like running from the ache. I wanted to hold on to it. I wanted to see where it led. And standing there, his hand brushing mine, his eyes steady on me, I knew this was no longer just about chance. Something bigger was unfolding, and neither of us was ready to let it go. I don't know how long we stayed like that, hands barely touching, hearts racing as though they were speaking to each other in a language words couldn't capture. The world outside had moved on, the voices in the other room had faded, the chairs probably stacked, the last few stragglers making their way out into the night, but we were still here, suspended in something that didn't need time to measure it. I thought about the person I had been when I first walked into that event, exhausted, guarded, already convinced nothing real could come of it. And now here I was, standing in a bathroom with a man whose name I had only just learned, yet feeling as if he had peeled back parts of me no one else had dared to touch. Fear still sat in my chest, heavy and insistent, but it no longer felt like a warning to run. It felt like proof that what was happening mattered, that it had weight, that it was worth the risk. He looked at me, his eyes softer now, and I could tell he was trying to read me, to see if I was slipping back behind my walls. I didn't let myself hide this time. I held his gaze, steady and unbroken, and in that moment something inside me shifted. I wasn't just surviving this night, I was choosing it. I was choosing him. My lips parted, and for the first time I let myself say what I had been holding back. I want to see you again. The words came out fragile, almost like a confession, but once they were spoken, I felt lighter, as if the weight I'd been carrying had finally cracked open. His face softened instantly, his smile small but so full of relief it made my chest tighten. I was hoping you'd say that, he murmured, his voice low and careful, like he didn't want to break the moment either. Something warm spread through me, something I hadn't felt in so long I barely recognized it, hope. It was terrifying, because hope had always been the first step before disappointment, but it was also beautiful. For once, I didn't push it away. We stood there a little longer, neither of us rushing to leave, but eventually the silence around us reminded us the night couldn't last forever. He finally stepped back, just enough to give me space, but not enough to make it feel like distance. "Come on," he said softly, almost smiling, "let's get out of here before they lock us in." I laughed, the sound breaking the heaviness, and nodded. We walked out together, side by side, and though nothing was promised, nothing was certain, I felt something inside me I hadn't felt in years, a beginning. The night air was cool when we stepped outside, brushing against my skin and waking me from the strange, dreamlike haze of what had just happened. He looked at me again, and in his eyes I saw the same fear, the same excitement, the same fragile hope that mirrored my own. And in that unspoken understanding, I knew this wasn't just a fleeting encounter. It was the start of something neither of us had expected, but both of us were ready to risk everything for.